What happens when the most powerful man in MMA shares footage that looks more like a medical emergency than fight hype? Dana White thought posting Brian Ortega's weigh-in would pump fans up, but instead it sparked outrage, accusations of negligence, and a tidal wave of backlash across the MMA community. At the same time, another storm was brewing. Former UFC champion Sean Strickland was slapped with a 6-month suspension for his role in a shocking altercation, and his reaction to the punishment only added fuel to the fire. Tonight, we'll break down Dana White's controversial footage, the fury it caused among fans and fighters, Strickland's fiery response to his suspension, and what these stories reveal about fighter safety, UFC politics, and the brutal realities of the sport. Stick around, because the climax of this story is one that could shake how fans view the UFC forever. Sean Strickland is no stranger to controversy. For years, he's cultivated an image as the fighter who says the things others won't, who trains like a madman, and who treats combat not just as a sport, but as a lifestyle. So when news broke that Strickland had been suspended for 6 months, it was almost fitting that the reason wasn't a failed drug test, wasn't a weight issue, but an altercation outside the octagon. The incident took place at a Tough Enough event, where Strickland confronted a fighter who had beaten his teammate. Words escalated, tempers flared, and what should have been a quiet night turned into headlines. The commission responded by hitting Strickland with a 6-month suspension, a $5,000 fine, and legal fees. On the surface, it looked like a punishment designed to make him sit down, cool off, and reflect. But there was an out clause. If Strickland completes an anger management course, he could reduce the suspension to 4.5 months, potentially setting up his return as early as November. Instead of offering remorse, Strickland leaned into the chaos. On Instagram, he posted an AI-generated picture of himself giving a lecture on how to be angrier, a mocking response that showed just how unserious he was taking the punishment. His caption was sharp, sarcastic, and laced with shots at Khamzat Chimaev. Rather than being humbled, Strickland framed the suspension as just another storyline in the wild saga of his career. And this is what makes Strickland such a polarizing figure. To some fans, he's reckless, unstable, and dangerous to the sport's image. To others, he's the raw, unfiltered heart of MMA, the guy who reminds everyone that fighters aren't PR-polished celebrities, but warriors with rough edges and unpredictable fire. His suspension didn't dampen his relevance, it amplified it. Every word he typed, every sarcastic quip, became a rallying cry for those who believe he represents the spirit of fighting in its truest form. But Strickland's controversy, as wild as it was soon overshadowed by something far more unsettling. Because while Strickland was mocking his punishment, Dana White was facing the kind of backlash no promoter wants. Accusations of endangering his own fighters. The scene was supposed to be routine. Brian Ortega stepping onto the scale ahead of his fight, squaring off against Aljamain Sterling. But what unfolded was anything but normal. Ortega stumbled to the stage, his face drained of color, his steps unsteady. He looked weak, hollow, like a man who had already fought a battle before even stepping into the cage. Rumors had already swirled that Ortega's weight cut had gone horribly wrong, that he had collapsed, that he'd been rushed to the hospital, that his fight was in jeopardy. Yet here he was, forcing his body onto the scale, registering 153 pounds in what would now be a catchweight fight. Instead of downplaying the incident, Dana White posted the footage himself. To him, it was part of the show, part of the build-up, part of what made Fight Week dramatic. But to fans and fighters, the video wasn't hype. It was horrifying. Doctors like Brian Sutterer went public, saying Ortega looked like he was one step from medical collapse. Fans compared him to a zombie, accusing Dana of putting money ahead of safety. Fighters like Lauren Murphy criticized Ortega's team, saying it was unthinkable that professionals could allow a cut this dangerous. For many, this wasn't just about Ortega. It was about a system that normalizes extreme suffering as part of the sport's spectacle. The footage spread like wildfire, and the more people saw it, the angrier the reaction became. Dana White wasn't just accused of negligence, he was accused of showcasing it, of treating a man's suffering as promotional content. Weight cutting has always been MMA's dirty secret. Fighters push their bodies to extremes, often shedding 20 or 30 pounds in a matter of days, sweating themselves into dangerous states just to hit a number on a scale. It's a ritual that's accepted, even celebrated, because it's seen as part of the grind. But Ortega's weigh-in forced people to confront the cost in real time. Here was a fighter who could barely walk. Here was a man whose body language screamed danger, and yet the machine rolled on. The commission cleared him. The UFC promoted him. Dana White posted him. The show didn't stop. That's the paradox of MMA. Fans crave authenticity, toughness, and drama. But when that drama crosses into life-threatening territory, the sport's humanity is called into question. For many, Ortega's weigh-in wasn't just concerning, it was damning. It raised questions about whether fighter safety is ever truly prioritized, or whether it's just a talking point when convenient. And here's the part that shocked even the most hardened MMA fans. Dana White didn't just allow Ortega to fight, he flaunted the footage. He turned a moment of fragility into promotion. And that begs a deeper question. Is this controversy just another PR cycle for the UFC, or is it a breaking point? Could this finally be the moment where fans, fighters, and commissions demand change in how the sport treats weight cuts and fighter health? Stick around, because the climax of this story ties Sean Strickland's chaos and Dana White's backlash together, and exposes a truth about MMA that many don't want to admit. Here's the truth that can't be avoided. As electrifying as Sean Strickland's antics may be, and as shocking as Dana White's decision to post Ortega's weigh-in footage was, both stories shine a light on the same unsettling reality. At its core, MMA is a sport that doesn't just thrive on chaos. It markets it, celebrates it, and sometimes even depends on it. And too often, that chaos comes directly at the expense of the very fighters who make the sport possible. When Strickland lashed out at an opponent's teammate and was hit with a suspension, it could have been framed as a serious disciplinary moment. Instead, it quickly became another storyline, fodder for headlines, memes, and debate shows. Strickland himself embraced it, mocking the idea of anger management, turning punishment into performance and further cementing his image as MMA's unpredictable outlaw. His suspension wasn't treated as a low point in his career, it was content, fuel for the spectacle that surrounds him. Ortega's weigh-in a different but equally disturbing way, followed the same pattern. Here was a man clearly suffering, his body drained, his steps unsteady, his face pale with exhaustion. In any other sport, this would have been a red flag, a medical emergency that halted the proceedings. But in the UFC, it was transformed into promotion. The footage wasn't hidden, it was broadcast by Dana White himself, as if Ortega's fragile state was just another dramatic plot twist meant to excite fans. His health, his safety, his very ability to fight, reduced to a viral clip in the never-ending content cycle. This is the brutal paradox of mixed martial arts. Fighters put everything on the line, their bodies, their reputations, their futures. They endure punishing weight cuts, brutal training camps, and life-changing injuries. And yet, when those struggles spill into the spotlight, they're not seen as crises to be addressed. They're seen as opportunities, as content, as moments to be consumed by fans scrolling through their feeds, eager for the next shocking clip or controversial headline. For Sean Strickland, the cost was a suspension and a fine, an inconvenience that he turned into another badge of honor for his chaotic persona. For Brian Ortega, the cost could be far greater because what's at stake isn't just his reputation, but his long-term health, his career, even his safety inside the cage. And for the UFC, both situations, Strickland's suspension and Ortega's suffering become exactly what the promotion thrives on. Storylines that keep the machine moving, narratives that stir the pot, content that sells. And that's the uncomfortable truth. In a sport built on risk, the line between competition and exploitation is razor thin. Fighters may be the warriors inside the cage, but outside of it, they are often treated as characters in a spectacle, their pain and punishment repackaged as entertainment for the world to watch. So, what do we make of all this? Sean Strickland's suspension showed how a fighter's personality can transform punishment into publicity. Dana White's Ortega footage showed how far the UFC will go to promote a fight, even if it means showing a man on the edge of collapse. Both stories highlight the razor-thin line MMA walks between entertainment and exploitation. For the fighters, the lesson is harsh. The system won't always protect you. For the fans, it's a reminder to look past the hype and see the humanity inside the cage. And for the UFC, it's a test of credibility. Because if these controversies keep piling up, the calls for reform will only grow louder. Now the question is yours. Should Dana White and the UFC be held accountable for Ortega's condition? Or is this simply the brutal reality of combat sports? And what do you think of Sean Strickland's suspension? Fair punishment, or just another chapter in his wild saga? Drop your thoughts below, because this conversation is bigger than one fight or one fighter. If you found this deep dive valuable, hit like, subscribe, and turn on notifications so you never miss the stories shaping the world of MMA. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you in the next one.